The first round of deportations of immigrants took place this week in Roswell. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement put 40 on a plane bound for Honduras. Some advocates are raising concerns, however, that rapid deportations will thwart those with legitimate asylum claims. We're going to talk about that. However, some also stand to benefit from this policy, such as companies with government contracts. One of those is CSI Aviation, owned by Alan Way. He's the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate from New Mexico. His firm is the largest private contractor for ICE Air, the aviation branch of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. CSI is one of many private firms that stand to benefit from the nearly $4 billion President Obama is seeking to address this immigration crisis. Joining me to talk about this and other stories of the week, we have line regular Rob Nicoleski of the New Mexico Watchdog. Also here this week is line regular Laura Sanchez-Rive of Sanchez Legal Solutions. Returning once more to the table, Harry Van Buren, professor with the Anderson School of Management, and I say professor, because last time he was associate professor. Congratulations. Welcome back to the line table as well, Russell Contreras of the Associated Press. Now, Russell, stay right there, because big gathering of advocates this week where folks were protesting I mentioned how folks are getting turned around very quickly, which is the plan, but some are saying things like legal representation, other things to seek asylum. We're going to slow this process down a little bit. What's your sense of where those folks are coming from?
Yeah, a lot of advocates say around 50% of the folks who are being detained aren't getting any sort of legal representation.
Right.
So if you have an unaccompanied minor, that immigrant cannot make the case for asylum. You don't know if he's a victim or she's a victim of trafficking. Right. You don't know what kind of violence. So they don't make their claim. So what's happening, because we want to quickly deport them, they're not getting their day, right? So they're to make a claim. If they are given some sort of legal status where they can stay under the law, then they can qualify for the unaccompanied minor foster care program. We know in 2010, 700 refugees were in foster care. Right now, there stands to be thousands of possible kids who may need foster care if they go through the legal process and get that designation. But what's happening is, because we're quickly deporting them, they're not getting that chance.
Right. You know, civil liberties issues, Rob Nicoleski, these things do come up. In the president's proposed budget, he does have money for legal help for these kids. But there was an interesting quote. You know, these kids don't have any money. These kids don't have any other, some of them don't have parents with them to kind of guide them through the process. It's not just having a lawyer. So can kids get really what they need out of this situation the way we have it set up?
Well, the law says, and the law that was passed in 2008 says that if you're an unaccompanied minor, that you get a hearing. There are all kinds of problems associated with that, both practical and legal. One of them, practical issues, is that according to the law, you're supposed to be able to be turned over to a parent or a guardian. Then you're given a court date. And that court date could take, because of the backlogs, can take anywhere between 1.5 years and 5 years. And then the other question too is, if you run the risk, if you've gone to all this trouble and possibly risked your life to go from Central America into the United States, and you're given a court date and you run the risk of getting deported, well, it begs the question, will you even show up for your court date?
That's right. There's a disincentive there, and that happens. And also, Harry Van Buren, if there is a relative in the country, to find them, to inform them, to get them down to where these places are. There's a whole process that has to happen. That can't happen if you put a kid in a plane in 48 hours, it seems to me.
That's absolutely right. I mean, there's no real focus on due process with these kids. And so you've got kids that are coming in. It's just an enormous logistical challenge to make sure that they're being treated fairly. I mean, it's important to bear in mind that these are kids who are risking their lives from incredibly violent circumstances. So if they go back, what's going to happen to them? So this whole notion that somehow it's a matter of lax enforcement and that's what's drawing them here doesn't really deal with the fact that they're coming from incredibly dire circumstances.
Interesting, Lauren, the president's request, he's got $5 million for advertising in these countries, saying, look, don't come. This is, whatever system you think is going on here is not actually happening, which seems like very little money to me if you're really serious about stemming the tide here. But what can we do in those countries? Because, you know, Harry's quite right. These kids are not just taking a walk in the park. They're fleeing for a very specific reason, mainly to save their lives in some cases. What can we actually do with something like that?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, just becoming aware of what's actually happening on the ground there. I think there's been a lack of understanding in terms of policy in our foreign policy in dealing with some of those countries and what's happening on the ground. And there's just a lot of confusion as well. I mean, I think it's a tough question to answer because it's unclear whether it's an economic, I mean, there's rhetoric about how it's only an economic issue. There's others that claim that it is much more of a refugee type of situation because of violence and other circumstances. We know that there's gangs that control some of those areas. There's a lot of drug trafficking. I think the U.S. can do a lot in terms of its policy in addressing some of the issues that are happening there on the ground.
Does that mean much to the average citizen? You hear so much rhetoric to send them back. We saw protests in California. We saw a funny one in Arizona. They thought it was immigrant kids. They were YMCA kids riding a bus who supposedly looked sad, I guess. I don't know. But again, for the average citizen here, is what Laura's saying, does that register for folks who just don't want to see illegal, undocumented folks here? Does that mean anything for those folks?
I think it's so complex, people don't understand it. You know, you mentioned the Arizona case. My colleague, Estri Galvan in the Tucson Bureau was covering this, and she was also bombarded with racial tweets, just saying, look, this is what's happening. And so
go ahead and explain just for 10 seconds what happened there. I kind of teased it, but.
Yeah, she was just retweeting saying, hey, look, there's a mariachi group, they're under attack, or there's a YMCA group, and she was getting attacked with all kinds of racial epithets, you're this, you're that, and she was like, look, I'm just reporting the news, I don't have a stance on this.
Right.
So there's this dialogue that's not getting through, and we're not having really good discussions about what's going on. I mean, we mentioned that we're funding a PR campaign in Central America saying don't come, but at the same time, we have funded a campaign in Cuba saying come.
Right.
So I mean, where's the discrepancy? So if you're an unaccompanied minor and you can get in, one of the provisions that allows you to get in is if you're Cuban or Haitian.
Right.
So where's the inequality? And this isn't even borderline on bigotry. You know, we're not even having that discussion.
That's an interesting point.
Well,
yeah.
the other
Good,
issue
please.
too is the people that are part of this entire enterprise. It's obviously an underground enterprise and they get paid thousands of dollars from by the families of these children in some cases, or these mothers with children who are coming across. So there's obviously a market there, and I think there was a very interesting story on one of the major networks that talked about, they went back and talked to some people and tried to watch who was making these deals, and they're sort of, underground folks that are just taking money right off the street and making promises about, leaving in the dark of night or whatever, and heading up for this long journey and getting paid, thousands and thousands per person to do so.
The numbers just stagger you. The sheer amount of kids, Harry, it's an amazing thing. So to catch up with it, we've had some come in, we've had some go out now.
Right.
But we had the secretary here saying we will deport you.
Right.
Who's he talking to? Who's the audience there for that?
It almost feels like the audience is for the anti-immigration crowd. Similarly, when Hillary Clinton was on the Daily Show, she offered a very similar sort of perspective on the issue. I think the underlying political dynamics of the immigration issue had been good for Democrats for a long period of time, and then this event showed up. And so, in some sense, I think that the administration is trying to send a hard line, saying that we're going to try to secure the border. But the problem is, the case that they're using is kids that are being exploited in their home countries.
Right.
Well, the other question too, though, is that we're not talking about, in the case of Haiti or Cuba, where a couple hundred. I mean, we're talking about tens of thousands. We were already talking about around 60,000, and there were estimates by, I think, from Jay Johnson saying that by the end of the fiscal year it could be 90,000 or 120,000. This is a political tightrope for both parties, I think. I think Harry's right that the Obama administration is sometimes one day Josh Earnest, the press secretary, says we will not deport anyone who's under refugee status. But on the other hand, they did send 40 people back from Artesia, and that goes back to the question of where do you go? If you do accept a lot of these people, that does send a signal that more can come.
That's right. Interestingly, Laura, we've got, as I mentioned in the setup, we've got a local person, Alan Way, who's the Republican nominee to take on Tom Udall this next cycle. He's made over $500 million since 2010 with these contracts with ICE.
$560 million.
Right, exactly right. It's a lot of dough.
That's
a lot of dough.
It is, and I think for me, I'm interested. First of all, I didn't know that. I mean, I knew he owned a company, but I didn't know that was one of the major contractors that was taking people back, not just here in New Mexico, but throughout the Southwest. And ICE has had this contract with his company since 2010. $560 million is a good chunk of change to be making off of something like this. And I can't imagine.
What does that do for him on the campaign trail? I mean, can he credibly talk about shutting down the border? Can he credibly talk about these things?
That's sort of part of I think the tightrope that at least here in New Mexico, that we're going to see from the Republicans and him in particular. You know, trying to speak to his base, to people that are very conservative about this issue, while at the same time making money from the deportation and the ICE contracts and all of that. I think it's going to make it very difficult for him to credibly say that we need to change immigration when he's profited from the current policies.
Sure. Your thought on that, Russell?
You know, and this is also, since we are a majority Hispanic state, we can bring this back to the governor's race, because you have, you know, the nation's only Latina governor who has been criticized by some immigrant advocates for her policies, but yet she's been the one Republican to tell other Republicans, tone down your rhetoric. Right? We need to reach out to people of color. And this rhetoric is not helping us at all.
Interesting. Coming up, we look at the ongoing questions around the waste isolation pilot plant closure.